They called Earth a backwater, a joke, a planet so dangerous only its own species could survive there. And barely. In the grand halls of the Galactic Concord, Deathworlders was a slur, meant to mock, not respect. Cut to scenes of towering alien fleets, smug council members, humans sitting quietly at the edge of the chamber. For decades, humanity stayed polite. We played their games, signed their treaties, smiled at their insults. Because patience was our oldest weapon. Quick flashes, soldiers in training, storms on Earth, a predator's eyes glowing in the dark. But patience has a breaking point. And when the galaxy pushed too far, when they laughed a little too loud, the Deathworlders stopped being polite. Slow zoom on a human soldier loading a weapon, helmet visor reflecting a burning alien fleet. The galaxy thought they understood war. They had no idea what was coming. Music swells, screen cuts to black with the title. They laughed until the Deathworlders decided they were done being polite. The assembly of mockery. The hall of the Galactic Concord was vast. An expanse of polished obsidian tiles that reflected the glow of the suspended starlight orbs overhead. Delegates from 100 worlds filled the air with the hum of overlapping voices, the occasional shrill laugh, and the faint rustle of silk-like garments. The room smelled faintly of ozone and alien perfumes. It was a theater of power, of politics, and, on this day, of arrogance. At the far end of the chamber, seated on the low dais reserved for new member species, were the humans. They sat quietly, their dark uniforms pressed, hands resting neatly on the table before them. No one could have mistaken them for being at ease. Their eyes, strange and sharp compared to the large, reflective pupils of most Concord races, scanned the room as if cataloging weaknesses. There were 6 of them, 3 men, 3 women, and not a single one spoke. The Concord's elder delegates, those who had ruled interstellar politics for centuries, found this behavior amusing. "Look at them," hissed Representative Kshor of the Valari, a reptilian with gleaming scales and a smirk that showed rows of serrated teeth. So quiet, as if they're afraid to speak in front of civilized company. Across the table, Grand Minister Palu of the Orn, whose jelly-like form quivered with mirth, replied, "Perhaps they know better. Deathworlders are all brute force and no diplomacy. It's adorable they even try to dress themselves as diplomats." A ripple of laughter rolled through the surrounding tables. Other delegates joined in, openly smirking, glancing toward the humans as though they were curious animals behind glass. Captain Rourke, the senior human representative, didn't react. His square jaw remained still, his blue eyes fixed forward. The others mirrored him, silent and unreadable. That silence only encouraged the mockery. "Do you suppose they've learned to use cutlery yet?" chuckled an elderly Lithari matron, her silver carapace gleaming in the artificial light. Kshor raised his voice so the humans could hear clearly. "I heard a report that a human warship once vented its own atmosphere just to win a skirmish. Savage creatures. We should be cautious before they decide to eat the furniture." More laughter. Even the recorder's small drone-like spheres hovered closer, sensing the rising entertainment value. A young human officer at the far end of the table shifted slightly in his seat. Lieutenant Harris's jaw tightened for a fraction of a second. Rourke shot him a quick glance, barely a flicker of movement, but it was enough. Harris froze again. It was then that Speaker Vorin, the Concord's presiding voice, called for attention. "Representatives, as today's agenda concerns the integration of Sol System into the Concord, we shall begin with an evaluation of the humans' readiness for interstellar cooperation." The phrase was deliberately chosen to sound diplomatic. But everyone knew it was a public interrogation. The first question came from Palu of the Orn, his gelatinous mass undulating like a slow tide. "Humans, tell us, how do you intend to adapt to our peacekeeping regulations, given your history of, shall we say, overreaction?" The laughter that followed was thinly veiled. Rourke's reply was calm, his voice deep and measured. "We intend to follow Concord law, as all members do." That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. Another delegate leaned forward, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. I imagine that will be difficult for a species that comes from a planet so hostile it kills its own inhabitants daily. How do you even survive such a death world? Do you simply breed faster than the dangers can kill you? Harsher laughter this time. Even the translators inserted a faint pause after the words, as though the systems themselves hesitated to repeat such barbs. One of the younger human women, Lieutenant Commander Valdez, spoke for the first time. We survive because we adapt. We endure. Her voice carried a subtle edge. The laughter dipped, but didn't stop. Endure? You make it sound noble, scoffed Kshor, leaning forward, eyes gleaming. It's merely animal instinct. That is all your kind has. Instinct and muscle. A hammer with no mind for the nail. The smirk widened. The Concorde is built on reason, human, not on bared teeth. Rourke didn't rise to the bait. He sat still, hands clasped, eyes never leaving the speakers. It was then that Vorin made a fatal mistake. Perhaps, he said slowly, our guests would entertain us with an example of their diplomacy. Surely they can speak of a time when they solved conflict without resorting to primitive violence. The chamber erupted into quiet chuckles. This was no request, it was a test framed as a joke. And Rourke knew it. He rose from his seat, slow and deliberate. The polished tiles seemed to magnify the sound of his boots. Every delegate's eyes were on him now. He didn't smile. He didn't bow. He just spoke. 200 years ago, the nations of Earth faced extinction. Rourke began, his voice low but steady. An asteroid the size of a small moon was inbound. No escape ships, no Concorde, just us. The laughter had stopped. The human stillness felt heavier now. We built weapons not to fight each other, but to shatter the rock. We turned our deadliest machines toward the sky, and when we fired, the night burned brighter than our sun. We saved our world. Not because we were told to, not because someone came to help, but because we don't wait for rescue. He let that settle. Some of the younger delegates shifted uncomfortably. We are polite, ladies and gentlemen of the Concorde, Rourke continued. We came here in peace, but never mistake peace for weakness, and never mistake patience for fear. There was silence, heavy, suffocating silence. Then, from somewhere in the chamber, Kshor laughed again. A sharp, dismissive bark. Pretty speech, human, but words are air. In the end, you are still Deathworlders. Dangerous, uncivilized. A few others joined him, the sound forced but persistent. Rourke sat back down without another word. His eyes met Harris's for a brief second, and the unspoken message was clear. Not yet. The humans had not come to make war. But the room could feel, like the faint pressure before a storm, that if the Concorde kept pushing, there would come a day when the Deathworlders would stop being polite. The provocation. The humans left the Grand Assembly Hall without speaking to anyone, their boots echoing against the marble-like corridors of the Concorde spire. The alien aides and minor envoys they passed gave them sidelong glances, some curious, some openly mocking. Word of Rourke's speech had already begun to circulate, twisted and sharpened in the retelling. By the time they reached their assigned quarters, the rumor had become a tale of threats, of humans boasting of their destructive power. It was exactly what the more arrogant Concorde members wanted. Proof that the Deathworlders were dangerous brutes. Inside the humans' secure conference room, the facade of calm broke. That was deliberate, Harris said, pacing the length of the table. They were trying to provoke you, Captain. Trying to make you slip so they could label us a threat before we're even admitted. Rourke's face remained a mask of composure, but his hands were clasped tightly behind his back. Of course they were. They think we're predictable. Valdez leaned forward in her seat. Then maybe we should be predictable. Show them what happens when you poke a Deathworlder. Rourke's gaze cut to her, sharp enough to silence the room. No, not yet. You've all read the briefings. Most of these species haven't fought a war in centuries. They've forgotten what it looks like. We remind them too soon, and will unite them against us before we've even set foot in their defense council. The youngest of the group, Ensign Callahan, frowned. And if they keep pushing? What if they decide to test us? Rourke didn't answer immediately. His eyes were distant for a moment, as if he were listening to something none of them could hear. Finally, he said, "Then we stop playing their game and make them play ours." The test came sooner than anyone expected. 2 days later, the humans were summoned to an informal gathering in the Concorde's training sphere, a massive zero-gravity chamber used for military exercises and tactical simulations. It was billed as a friendly exchange between member species. But when they arrived, it was clear this was no casual meet and greet. Dozens of Concorde security personnel floated in the chamber's center, each wearing their respective combat gear. In the observation gallery above, representatives and dignitaries gathered, their voices a low, anticipatory murmur. Rourke recognized more than a few faces from the assembly, the same ones who had mocked them. Speaker Vorin himself stood at the edge of the platform, wearing the faint, diplomatic smile of someone who thought they were being clever. "Captain Rourke," he said, gesturing toward the chamber, "a rare opportunity. We thought your delegation might enjoy a demonstration of Concorde tactical drills." Rourke's eyes narrowed fractionally. "Drills? A friendly simulation," Vorin said smoothly. "We'd like to see how your people fare against our peacekeeping forces. No weapons. No harm intended." The words sounded harmless, but the glint in the speaker's eyes betrayed the truth. This was a public spectacle, a staged humiliation. Valdez muttered under her breath. "They want to embarrass us. Or study us," Harris replied quietly. "Either way, they're going to regret it." Rourke's lips twitched in the faintest ghost of a smile. "We'll participate." Vorin's smile widened. "Excellent. 5-on-5, then? Select your team." Rourke didn't hesitate. "Harris, Valdez, Callahan, Morris, and I will enter." The chamber was a sphere 200 meters across, its walls a shifting holographic display of asteroids and debris fields. Artificial gravity was disabled. The only way to move was to push off surfaces or use maneuvering thrusters. Their opponents were tall, broad, and visibly confident members of the Concorde Guard, chosen for their speed, strength, and adaptability. They wore light exosuits that amplified movement and carried padded shockstaves meant to simulate melee combat without lethal force. The humans wore simple training gear. No exoskeletons, no thrusters, just their bodies. The Concorde crowd above chuckled when they saw this. The match began with a loud tone, and the guard moved first, 5 armored figures darting forward with practiced precision. In 0G, speed and control were everything. Or so they thought. The first guard member to reach Harris swung his stave in a wide arc. Harris caught the shaft with one hand, pulled, and used the alien's momentum to spin him headfirst into a holographic asteroid. The alien bounced off, disoriented. In the same instant, Valdez twisted midair to avoid 2 converging attackers. Instead of retreating, she slammed her shoulder into the nearer one, grabbing a handhold on his armor to use him as a pivot point. Her boot connected with his teammate's chest, sending both drifting backward. Callahan intercepted a strike from the largest guard member, locked their limbs, and simply didn't let go. In 0G, every movement was mutual. Callahan used the alien's strength against him, spinning them both before releasing at just the right angle to send his opponent tumbling out of control. The crowd's laughter faltered. Rourke himself faced 2 at once. One lunged, the other tried to flank. He caught the first by the wrist, used his own body mass to anchor, and kicked off the second, sending the alien spinning into his teammate. Both went tumbling. In less than 30 seconds, all 5 guard members were floating helplessly, regaining their bearings. The humans hung still in the center of the sphere, calm and breathing evenly. Vorin's voice crackled over the comms. "Round 1 goes to the humans." The crowd was murmuring now, less mocking, more curious. "Again," Rourke said. The second round was harsher. The guard abandoned formality, coming in harder and faster, trying to overwhelm with numbers. But human muscle density, reaction speed, and instinct for close-quarters fighting turned the tide again. 0G fighting was about controlling inertia, about knowing exactly when to push and when to anchor, and Deathworlders had learned long ago how to fight in 3 dimensions. By the time the match ended, the humans had won every round. No shouting, no boasting, no theatrics. Just precise, efficient dominance. When they left the chamber, Voron's smile was thin and strained. Impressive, the speaker said. Perhaps a touch more aggressive than necessary. Rourke didn't break stride. That was us being polite. That night, footage of the friendly match spread through Concord networks. But it wasn't the humiliation the elder species had hoped for. Instead, the most repeated clip was the final round. Rourke's team floating silent and still, while 5 Concord guards drifted around them in slow defeat. The comments began to shift. Words like dangerous were still there, but now they were mixed with disciplined, formidable, and, most unsettling to the old powers, prepared. And somewhere deep in the Concord's secure communication channels, a quiet discussion began. Perhaps the Deathworlders should not be provoked further. The last insult. 3 days after the training sphere incident, the humans were summoned again, this time to a smaller, more private chamber deep within the Concord spire. The message was phrased as a security briefing, but every human in Rourke's team recognized the smell of a setup. The room was circular, lined with dark glass panels that shimmered faintly with encrypted data streams. At its center was a crescent-shaped table, behind which sat 9 senior Concord delegates. Their faces were unreadable masks of composure, but the tension in the air was as thick as ozone before a storm. Rourke led his team inside. The door sealed with a muted hiss behind them. "Captain Rourke," said Speaker Voron, his tone politely cold. "Please sit." Rourke remained standing. So did the rest of his team. "You asked for us. Speak." A flicker of irritation passed over Voron's features, quickly smoothed away. "The Concord has reviewed the footage of your performance in the training sphere. While impressive, some members have expressed concerns. Concerns that you may not be fit for peaceful integration." There it was, diplomatic venom wrapped in a velvet tone. "Concerns," Valdez repeated flatly. "Because we didn't let ourselves be humiliated? Because you displayed the instincts of a predator," interrupted Minister Trelvac of the Lithari, her silver carapace catching the low light. "You fought without weapons and still overwhelmed our elite guard in seconds. Such skill, applied recklessly, could destabilize entire sectors." Rourke's jaw tightened. "We acted within the rules you set. You called it a friendly match." Kshor, the Valari representative, leaned forward with that same serrated smile from the assembly. "We called it a match to observe restraint. And what we observed was that humans only pretend to have it." The air in the room shifted. Harris took half a step forward before Rourke raised a hand to halt him. "You've made your opinion clear," Rourke said evenly. "What do you want from us?" Voron exchanged a glance with the others before speaking. "A demonstration. A final test, if you will. To see whether humanity can resolve conflict without force." Rourke's eyes narrowed. "Define the parameters." The room's wall panels shimmered, projecting a holographic display of a cargo station orbiting the mining world Kothar 7. The image zoomed in on a cluster of smaller ships docked at its spine. Scavenger craft, hastily modified, with crude weapons bolted onto their hulls. "Pirates," Trelvac said. "A small band of them has taken control of the station. Hostages are involved. We have negotiated for their release, but progress is slow." "You want us to negotiate," Rourke said, already knowing the answer. "Without violence," Voron confirmed. "If you can resolve this peacefully, it will go a long way toward easing our concerns." Valdez's voice was edged with suspicion. "And if we refuse?" Voron's smile was thin. "Then your petition for Concord membership will be delayed indefinitely." The trap was obvious. Pirates were opportunistic, vicious, and unpredictable. Negotiating with them without leverage was like trying to pet a starving predator. The Concord wasn't offering the humans a test. They were offering them a no-win scenario. Rourke glanced at his team. Harris's eyes said, "Don't do it." Valdez's said, "Let's break something." Callahan's said, "This is going to be fun." "Fine," Rourke said. "We'll take your test." Kothar 7 station was a decaying relic of the early mining age. Its hull scarred by micrometeorite strikes, its docking arms bent and pitted. As the human shuttle approached, the pirate's comm signal came through, a harsh, static-filled bark. "Dock at Bay 3. No weapons. No tricks. Try anything and we start venting civilians." Rourke sent back a single reply. "Understood." They docked. The airlock cycled open with a groan, revealing a corridor lit by flickering strips of light. The stench of unwashed bodies and burned circuitry hit them immediately. Half a dozen pirates waited, their mismatched armor plates hanging loose, weapons slung lazily but within reach. The leader, a broad-shouldered Braccaran with jagged horns curling from his skull, stepped forward. "You're the Concord's negotiators?" "We are," Rourke said. The Braccaran's lips peeled back in a grin. "Then negotiate. We want 100,000 credits, a ship with a jump core, and safe passage out of this system. You give us that, maybe we let the hostages go." "Maybe," Valdez said sharply. The pirate leader's grin widened. "Depends on our mood." It was posturing, Rourke knew, but posturing with teeth. He also knew the Concorde wasn't sending any backup. They'd be watching from orbit, waiting for the humans to fail. So Rourke didn't posture back. He smiled. "You'll get your ship," he said, "and your credits. But first I want to see the hostages. Proof of life." The Braccaran snorted. "You're in no position to demand anything." "I'm not demanding," Rourke said calmly. "I'm negotiating." Something in his tone made the Braccaran hesitate. Finally, he gestured to one of his men. "Show them." They were led deeper into the station, past storage bays and gutted processing rooms, until they reached a sealed cargo hold. Inside, a dozen civilians sat on the floor, hands bound, eyes wide with fear. They were alive, frightened, but alive. Rourke turned to the pirate leader. "Good. Now I'll tell you how this is going to work." The Braccaran laughed. "You think you're in control here?" "I know I am," Rourke said. And in that moment, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. It wasn't in his words. It was in the way he stood, in the way his team subtly shifted their weight, in the way Harris's eyes locked on the nearest guard like a predator calculating distance. The pirates had seen this stance before in other predators. It was the stillness before the strike. "You'll get your ship," Rourke continued. "But if a single hostage is harmed, if a single shot is fired, we will take it personally. And you do not want humanity to take things personally." The Braccaran's grin faltered. "Do you think we're afraid of you?" he said, voice rising. Rourke stepped closer, close enough that the pirate leader could see the faint scar running along his jaw. "Yes, you are." For a long, tense moment, no one moved. Then the Braccaran spat on the floor, muttered something in his language, and jerked his head toward his crew. "Get them to the docking bay. Now." The handover was quick. Too quick. The pirates boarded the ship the Concorde had prepared for them and launched without incident. The hostages were safe. From orbit, Voron's voice came over the comms. "Impressive, Captain Rourke. You managed it without firing a shot." Rourke didn't respond right away. He was watching the pirate vessel's trajectory on the shuttle's NAV screen. It was heading for the jump point, exactly as expected. Then Rourke keyed a command. Far away, hidden in the Concorde shuttle's cargo bay, a small device activated. A beacon with a single program signal. An old human signal. In deep space, far beyond Kothar 7, an unmarked human frigate stirred from stealth mode. Plotted an intercept course. Rourke finally spoke. "We kept it peaceful. But we never said we'd let them walk away." Done being polite. The pirate vessel never made it to the jump point. From the Concorde observation deck in orbit over Kothar 7, Speaker Voron and the other senior delegates watched the shuttle feed in real time. The pirate's ship, a patched-together scavenger craft with barely functional shields, coasted on its burn toward the shimmering curve of the system's jump gate. Then, without warning, a shadow detached itself from the darkness beyond the asteroid belt. It was big, sleek, matte black, and utterly silent. No transponder. No Concorde registry. Its lines were angular and predatory, bristling with recessed weapon ports that didn't match any known blueprint. The moment its hull slid into the camera's frame, the pirates began screaming over open comms. The frigate didn't hail them. It didn't warn them. It simply matched their vector, accelerating with effortless precision. On the Concorde shuttle, Harris sat in the co-pilot's chair, eyes on the tactical display. Frigate reports visual lock. Rourke's voice was calm. Tell them shadow only. No survivors. Valdez raised an eyebrow from the rear seat. That's going to make waves. Rourke didn't look back. Good. In the feed, the pirates panicked. They tried to spin up their jump drive early, but the frigate was already in weapons range. Twin lances of pale blue light, coherent plasma accelerators, slashed across the void, neatly severing the scavenger's port engine and forward weapons array. The pirate ship spun, bleeding atmosphere and drive plasma into space. Still, the frigate didn't fire to kill. Not yet. Instead, it slid alongside the crippled vessel, close enough for its black hull to eclipse the stars. From its underside, a smaller craft, a boarding dart, launched and buried itself into the scavenger's midsection. The feed cut briefly to static, then switched to helmet cams from the boarding team. They moved like ghosts. 6 humans in matte armor, no insignia, no identifiers, drifting through the pirate corridors with magnetic boots and suppressed rifles. They didn't shout. They didn't threaten. They simply moved, clearing rooms with terrifying speed. Every pirate they encountered went down, stunned, bound, and tagged for retrieval. The Brackeran leader tried to rally his crew. The helmet chem caught him mid-swing with a jagged blade, only for a human to catch his wrist, twist, and drop him with a shock baton. The strike was precise enough to end the fight, not the man. The whole operation took 3 minutes. 3 minutes and the pirate ship was empty. From orbit, the Concorde delegates watched in stunned silence. "They're capturing them," murmured Minister Trelvac. "Not killing." Voron's eyes narrowed. "Why? Why not just?" The answer came as the human boarding team transmitted back to the frigate. The pirates, bound and disarmed, were loaded into the frigate's brig. A single comm packet was sent to the Concorde fleet, coordinates and prisoner manifest. Then, without another word, the frigate turned away from the scene. It did not wait for thanks. It did not wait for orders. It vanished back into deep space. Back aboard the Concorde shuttle, Harris was smirking. Message received. No shots at civilians, no dead pirates, and no Concorde jurisdiction violated. Valdez grinned. And now those delegates have to explain why there's a human warship operating inside their territory. Rourke finally allowed himself a faint smile. Exactly. They wanted to see if we could end a threat without violence. We did. But we also reminded them, if we choose violence, it's fast, it's clean, and it's over before they can react. When they returned to the Concorde spire, the atmosphere was different. The same delegates who had laughed in the assembly now avoided meeting the humans' eyes. Conversations stopped when they entered a room. Even the security personnel gave them space. Not out of fear exactly, but with the wariness one reserves for a predator whose claws you've just glimpsed. The formal debrief was brief and tense. Voron sat across from Rourke in a small council chamber, the other senior delegates arrayed behind him. He cleared his throat. The hostages were recovered unharmed. The pirates have been transferred to Concorde custody. Your unregistered frigate departed without clearance. Rourke didn't blink. It wasn't here for clearance. Voron's jaw tightened. Your methods were efficient, but unconventional. Unconventional is why the hostages are alive, Rourke said evenly. You wanted proof we could act without bloodshed. You have it. And proof that your species maintains covert military assets in Concorde space, Voron countered. Rourke leaned forward slightly, just enough for the room to feel smaller. If you think that was our only asset, you've misunderstood everything you've seen. The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Trelvac spoke, her voice quieter now. You've made your point, Captain. The Concorde will reconsider its approach to your petition. Rourke stood. Good. And we'll reconsider our patience. Outside the chamber, Harris let out a low whistle. Think they got the message? They got it, Rourke said. Question is whether they're smart enough to keep it. Valdez smirked. And if they're not? Rourke's eyes were cold. Then we stop being polite. That night, across the Concorde's encrypted networks, 1,000 quiet conversations began. Some were whispers of warning, Deathworlders are dangerous. Others were grudging admissions, but they keep their word. And some, from the youngest and most ambitious members of the Concorde, were something else entirely. Perhaps humanity is the ally we need when the real war comes. The humans didn't celebrate. They didn't hold a victory dinner or boast about their actions. That wasn't the point. But in their private quarters, Rourke gathered his team. They think they've seen what we can do, he said. They've only seen the surface. The moment they forget that, they'll start pushing again. And when they do, he let the thought hang. Valdez grinned. We'll remind them. Harris chuckled. Politely? Rourke's smile was thin. No, not politely. 2 weeks later, a Valari patrol ship stumbled across a drifting freighter near the Concorde border. Its hull was pitted and scarred, its transponder silent. When they boarded, they found the Brackern pirate crew alive but bound, stripped of weapons, and left in the cargo hold with just enough supplies to survive. Pinned to the wall was a single strip of metal, etched in an alien dialect every Concorde species could read. We tried being polite, and somewhere, in the dark between the stars, a black-hulled frigate waited, silent, patient, and watching. Because the Deathworlders weren't here to prove they could be civilized. They were here to remind the galaxy what happens when you forget why they're called that.